Good morning and welcome to GKBA Today. My name is Carlos Ribero. I am one of the directors of the Greater Kendall Business Association, the friendliest place to do business. And what this show is all about is getting you to know some of our members and what they're all about, and of course, what their businesses are all about. So today we have our very first guest on this show. You're inaugurating the show, Juan. We have Juan Medina from HMI, Healthy Minds Institute.
Yes, sir.
How are you, Juan?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing very well. So,
by the way, thank you for the surprise. I didn't know I was the first guest.
You are the first guest. You are the first guest. So, yeah, I didn't tell you that. I didn't want to make you nervous.
No. I like surprise. I like.
All right. So, Juan is an entrepreneur. He has several businesses, but before, I always like to say people do business with people, not
Yes.
with businesses. So Juan, tell me a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love Greater Kendall. We are members. January, I believe, was our first luncheon back, and it's been exciting, and we look forward to helping you guys out to promote it. So my history goes back to New Orleans and Nicaragua.
Okay.
So I was born
That's an interesting...
It's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
So my family on both sides, they're both from Nicaragua, both dad and mom. But in 1979, there was a war going on in Nicaragua. My mom happened to have been born in New Orleans, and my grandparents, her parents, were in New Orleans. So the United States pretty much came down with a B-52 bomber plane and said, I'm picking up all U.S. citizens, get on the plane. My mom was 8 months pregnant with me and my twin sister.
Okay.
And she dodged bullets.
Literally?
Literally bullets, went through trenches.
Wow.
And it took her about 9 hours to get to the airport, which normally would have taken about 15 minutes in Nicaragua.
This was Daniel Ortega, or was it?
Daniel Ortega.
Okay. Overthrowing Somoza, right? At that time, or
no, that was after the Somoza time.
Okay, that was after Somoza.
So then they made it to New Orleans. I was born in New Orleans. Few months, about 6 months later, we moved back to Nicaragua. Things were back to normal, and I lived there for my first 10 years. Now, every vacation time that I had, I would travel to New Orleans. I had my grandparents there, and since then, I love New Orleans. I said, okay, the food is great, the people are great, and my first big moment is when I was little, 8 years old, and I remember having a conversation with my mother and telling her, when I'm 10 years old, I am moving to New Orleans with or without you.
Wow.
And I mean, now when you get a chance to go back and look at it, you're like, okay, that was a strong affirmation. Like, I didn't know what affirmations were, but at that point, you're like, oh, yeah, that's a strong statement. And just so happens to be at the age of 10, I ended up having brain surgery.
Wow.
There was a small brain tumor growing on the left side. Luckily, everything came out good. But surgery was in New Orleans. Since I was a U.S. citizen, they flew me in. Since then, I remember one of the first things I told my mother when I woke up from surgery is, I'm not going back to Nicaragua. Like I told you. And I happened to be 10 years old.
Right when you wake up in recovery,
that's what I thought about. I'm not going back. This is my chance to stay. So actually, my mother at that point thought about it and said, okay, you know what? You guys are in a good opportunity to come in, study here in the United States. So she actually went back to Nicaragua, sold everything, and we ended up moving to New Orleans.
And what was that transition like? Because you're living in basically a third world country, but you had a little taste of it because you would come here in the summers, right?
Yes.
What was the transition like?
So I remember, and you and I were having a conversation before about things that happened to you when you were little that you do not want your kids to experience. I remember we went about 2 weeks where all we had to eat was rice and beans. At that point, my mother was working for the Red Cross as a medical technologist, so in the blood bank, and because she worked there, they were able to get free rice. But there was a time that the government just started taking things away, and there was no money, and it was unbelievable. Then I remember when we first started getting tomatoes in, and then we got some veggies, and then things kind of like went back to normal. But those are some rough days. Like, you learn a lot. You learn how to be creative. That's the one thing.
Okay.
I would like them to go so they can see how simple life is. The simpler life is, I believe the smarter you get. For the simple reason is that you use your brain. Over there, you don't have a lot of video games. You don't have a lot of toys. You don't have a lot of money. So you get creative. All of a sudden, all these little pebbles and all these little rocks that you see, you make them into castles. You make them into roadways. You start building your own little cities with sticks and stones, literally.
Yeah.
And you start climbing trees. So you start, putting away any fear that you have. I mean, right now, and God, I have one of my daughters here with me at the studio, so I do not want to embarrass them, but we went to a park one time and I said, hey, look, here's a rock, get on it and jump from it. And they got to the edge and they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to jump through it. Well, that's because they haven't experienced climbing trees like we used to.
Have they gone to Nicaragua? Have you taken them?
No, they haven't.
Okay.
Right now, the situation got really bad. Right before COVID, there was a horrible transition where college students started protesting the government. Government came in, they started shooting people from the streets, and then COVID hit, and the whole economy went down. Crime is bad, and right now, it is a very, I don't want to say communist country, but it's a very socialist.
Okay.
Excuse me. And right now, I just don't feel like it's safe.
Not the right moment.
I do have one of my uncles who travels there a lot. And I do want to go back because I remember I want to go back to just see where I lived,
right.
See, relive those moments. But I think right now my wife would kill me if I tell her I'm going to go take a trip just because of the violence part of it. She's like, what are you doing? It's not worth it right now. So, but no, I would like one day for them to go.
Okay.
Now my wife's from Brazil, and they have gotten a chance to go to Brazil.
Okay.
And, over there it's not a third world country, but it's kind of like working its way towards there. So they get an opportunity to see some of the poverty, some of the people that have less, how people live, but yeah, I want them to experience that. They need to. I think it makes them stronger. Here in the United States, they're just so lucky. We've been able to give them opportunities and things that we never had.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I lived in the Dominican Republic, lived and worked as an adult and as a husband, a father. And we had an expat community, and they used to say that living in the States is too easy. So I can relate to what you're saying. So let's fast forward. You were in New Orleans from what age to what age? From 10, obviously, after your surgery, to what age?
Up until the age of 25 when I moved to Miami.
Okay.
So
Did you go to college there and everything? Or?
So I started college over there at LSU. A huge Tiger fan. So,
okay.
And I started my first sales experience over there, which kind of got my mind to thinking about business.
Understood.
It was, at that point, I didn't realize it was a little pyramid scheme because you don't recognize it the first time I was 21 years old. But they had you go from door to door. It was door-to-door sales in business, not residential. So you'll be knocking at every business, even when they said no soliciting sign, you'll still go in there.
Doesn't matter. And
to do sales. And you're there to sell whatever you had. We had Disney products. We even had kitchen knives. Sometimes I was walking around with a duffel bag full of kitchen knives. And, I learned that, if you act like you've been there before, people, get a chance to trust you, or at least they'll give you a chance to do your sales pitch. I mean, there was a point that I was going into government buildings with knives, and they already knew, okay, I was going to certain places. So here I am walking around government buildings with knives all over the place. But I love sales. Like, it gets you out of your comfort zones. It gets you to try something new. And back then, their law of average was you're going to get one sale out of 10 no's.
Which is kind of the law of averages, standard law of averages, yeah.
So the way you switch that around and pump yourself up is that, okay, let's get my first 10 no's out the way so I can get my first sale. And that's how we switched it around, and I became a trainer for them. And because people will come in and go, oh my God, hey, Carlos, I would like to sell you this. And you tell me no. Then you go to the next company and they keep telling you no. And people get, people don't like to be told no.
Right.
And then their self-esteem goes down, their confidence goes down. So we switched it around. It was like, hey, let's get excited. Let's get our first 10 no's so we can get our first sale and start making money. 100% commission.
Right.
So you didn't work, you didn't make money.
You didn't sell, you didn't make money.
Exactly. Sales. So then I had an opportunity to work with my dad. My parents got divorced when I was 2. He was living in Miami half the time and the other half in Nicaragua. So there was an opportunity to team up with someone and make cleaning products.
Okay.
So when we were talking to that person, he called me up October 19th, 2004. And he says, I nailed it. You can start right away, and team up with this guy. And I told him,
your dad called
This is my dad calling me. I remember that night I was talking to my sister and I said, go, I can be there in 2 days. So in 2 days, I dropped everything I was doing. I flew down to Miami October 21st, 2004, and pretty much just a couple of suitcases and ready to work. Now, Miami welcomed me with Miami traffic that I was not aware of.
Okay.
That when you're living in Kendall and you're driving to Hialeah, it'll take you about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that was my big welcome coming into Miami. A few months later, Hurricane Katrina hit, and you learn a valuable lesson. That was one of the lessons I learned in my life, that at that point, everything you hold or everything you think you care about, materialistic, doesn't matter. I left most of my stuff in my grandparents' garage, and it was under 9 feet of water. Everything got destroyed.
Wow.
Luckily, family was fine. I ended up, of course, staying in Miami since then. But you learn, that is one of the life lessons that you learn. At that point, you just focus on the present, enjoy what you have, and who cares about the material stuff. So since then, I've learned, okay, live a simpler life. Try to have the house you want, but don't have overcrowded with stuff. So going back to the business part,
right.
Sorry, I got distracted there. Ended up working with my dad. We ended up
What was the business?
So it was cleaning products.
Selling cleaning products?
Yes, making them.
Oh, making them.
And then we started making our own bleach.
Okay.
Which at that point we were buying the.
So you had a factory in Hialeah?
In Hialeah.
Okay.
Medley. Yeah,
Medley, okay.
Hialeah. So we started importing raw materials. We were making our own gallons. We had the machines, learned a lot about operations of machines that I never knew I was going to learn. And we had that business for a few years. Unfortunately, raw materials got very high. We had old machineries, and we had to shut it down.
Who were your clients?
Distributors in supermarkets.
Okay.
So I remember our biggest client at the time was Presidente Supermarkets.
Okay.
So they were buying the bleach.
So it was private label bleach you did for them?
No, it was our own brand.
It was your brand, okay.
Yes, Supreme Bleach.
Okay.
And we had one degreaser that was actually private label.
Okay.
That we did. And then, of course, thinking back, I was like, oh my God, if that company would have been alive during the pandemic, I would have been a billionaire.
You would have been talking to me right now here.
But you learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
The one lesson I learned from that is that was my first time actually being an administrator of a company. So my dad,
what was your role there?
So I was kind of filling in for my dad when he would leave to Nicaragua.
Okay.
I was learning the operations and kind of taking care of the warehouse. Then when he would leave, I would take care of everything else in the administration side. My first big lesson, and actually I wrote it down, but I remember I didn't want to forget it as an administrator, is that there were a lot of problems going on. When you become an administrator and a manager, everyone thinks, oh my God, it's so easy. You just sit in an office, sit back, everything is kumbaya, and you collect checks. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
You build up paperwork, like you were mentioning, you build up paperwork, and the personnel issues, I think, are your biggest issues.
Absolutely.
So,
I always say, you have one employee, you have one problem.
Yes. So as a new guy, never really experiencing, having everyone look up to you.
Were you younger than everybody else there, or not necessarily? Because you were a very young man at that point.
There was only one person younger than me.
Okay.
So yes, that made it also a different challenge.
Right.
Because people are looking at you, a young guy, going, who are you? Where's your experience? Why are you guiding me on this? So I remember one time I just had a very hard time. It was one of those late nights. I stayed in the office. I'm like, I'm staying here right now. Like, I need a break. Like, everyone left. So I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I'm looking for advice. I said, listen, this person has this problems. Miguel has this. Luciana has this. Like, how do I fix this? This is you telling him? This is me telling him.
Okay.
I need advice. His advice was simple. He says, let me ask you something, son. Are you an administrator or are you an employee? I said, well, Dad, I'm an administrator. Good. Act like it. Hung up the phone.
Wow.
Huge lesson. At first, I was in shock.
Right.
I might have said a couple of curse words after that.
Right. Okay.
But then I stayed there. I remember I stayed in the office almost until midnight, just thinking about what happened. I didn't call him back. It's too prideful to call him back at that point. You're 25. You think you know everything. But I realized what he meant. You cannot reach for everyone else to solve those problems. If you're going to run a company, you got to learn how to solve the issues right away. And you cannot let your employees' personal issues become the company's issues. So my mentality switched after that, and I became an administrator. And I said, okay, I'm sorry you're feeling like that, but now work, what's going on in the company. And you have to learn how to have more of a little cold heart. Yeah. When you're in the company, your feelings, your heart stays at home. You're there to use your mind. And that was what he was trying to tell me. Don't use your heart when you're there. You're there to use your mind. You have a responsibility to the company, even though it's yours, but that company pays everyone else's wages. So that was like my first big lesson. If it wasn't for that hang up, I don't know if I would have learned that lesson.
You basically, he left you to figure it out for yourself.
Yes.
And you did it.
Yeah, I did it for that time. It took a while,
right?
But it changes your mentality. It's like an on and off switch.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, off. Let's do this. Now the switch comes on.
So after the chemical company, what happened?
So after that, during that time, had not finished school yet.
Okay.
Realized I went to FIU, and I got my bachelor's in international business.
Okay.
I loved it because there were a few classes that really open your eyes, especially when you're dealing with the Latin community, which in Miami you are.
Right.
A lot. When you're dealing with other countries, they don't have a time rush. Time is not money. In the U.S., everything's time is money, time is money, time is money. Over there, it's not. They want to know who you're dealing with first. They want to get to know you. Yeah. And I experienced that when I went to Guadalajara, Mexico. There was a company that called us right when we were closing the plant, saying that they wanted to import some spices in bulk and sell it to companies like Badia, Trujillo, and Spices. So they called us in, went to Guadalajara, got to see their plant. And I planned for a 2-day trip. We're going to go there. Maybe the first day might be rough. I don't know. So the next day we're going to talk business. I come back the following day.
Not like that.
No, we went there. The first day we didn't talk a single thing about business. And every time I try to bring it up. So what amount are you looking to bring in? So Juan, and then he just started asking more personal questions, personal questions. We spent 3 days getting to know them and them getting to know us. Yeah. Before then, late in the third day, he says, okay, let's take a trip an hour away and let's go look at the plant and let's talk about what we're trying to do. So studying that helped me because when I was there, I remember, okay, this is what they mean by it. Yeah. Like they wanted to know who we were to see if they felt comfortable enough to show us their plant and then talk about what are the business opportunities. Unfortunately, nothing happened with them. Their pricing was too high. Yeah. But I just pretty much laughed it off, saying, "Yeah, dude, like we could get that from other places a lot cheaper." But again, it's another part of the life where you learn as an entrepreneur. You're in another country learning how to do business. So after that, I ended up working for a company. Community Blood Centers, it was called back then, and now it's One Blood. And there was the red buses that you see collecting blood. And that was a great experience because it got me back into sales. You're really out there, you're trying to explain to people the importance of donating blood, not just for the people you're saving, but also for yourself. So I realized that.
How hard of a sale is that?
That law of average we were talking about, 10 to 1 ratio, it becomes more of like a 30 to 1 ratio. All right. It really does because people are afraid of a needle. Yeah. And then people have a misconception too about the pricing and all of that in the hospital. And that's another conversation that I'm sure we can have that could take a couple of hours to talk about that. But I ended up working there, I ended up doing a blood drive at a college, and one of the directors approached me and said, hey, with your experience, you should be working in career services, where you can bring your knowledge and explain to our college students how to go out, how to get jobs, help them to do interviews, mock interviews, and finding job sites where they can do internships. And I said, oh, golly, I never thought about it. Like, never thought about working for a college.
Right.
I mean, I didn't, at that point, it was just like, I just wanted my bachelor's to get out. Now you want me to go represent.
I was done.
But I didn't. I said, you know what? That's a great concept. So I ended up working at a small college as
Here in Miami?
Here in Miami.
Okay.
For about a year and a half. And then here's another lesson I learned. My own manager took me out of that department and gave my resume to another college for a director's position. She recommended me. And I realized, I said, this is what management is. You come in, you train someone, they do a good job for you. And after that, you find out what their goals are. And I had expressed to her, hey, I want to move up to management. Once I had the taste for working for myself, I wanted that responsibility again. And she helped me to get that other job. So I became a director of career services. I was there for about 8 years at another college. And that's when my life turned again, because there was a cleaning company there, and that got replaced. And the new company that came in, they didn't speak English very well. So the director for the campus asked me to always translate everything. So while I was doing the translations, I realized, oh my God, like there's a lot of opportunities in commercial cleaning. And I teamed up with the current cleaning company there, and I became his partner. So I was more in the business development side, and he was more on the operational side. He knew how to do everything. I did not know how to do anything regarding cleaning. I didn't know what chemicals to use, what are the trainings. But so we teamed up again.
And you were still in your job?
I was still in my job.
Okay.
Our visions didn't match at that point. About a year later, and I realized, you know what? It feels good to be now employed by yourself. So I went ahead and I opened up my own company, Extreme Commercial Cleaners.
All right. So this is a question I love to ask entrepreneurs. What was that factor that made you say, it's time? How did you know it was time to take that leap, to leave a paycheck behind and to take that leap into entrepreneurship? Now you're an adult. Are you married at that point? Or
yes.
No? Okay.
Yes,
kids at that point?
At that point, I had, yes, my oldest.
Okay. So it's a bigger risk. Excuse me.
Actually, I had both of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me not forget the birthdays.
Right. So it's a bigger risk at that point. You have people that you're responsible for. What made you take that leap?
I wanted more opportunities. And at that point, that college that I was in, I loved what I did. My next move from there would have to been campus director. And I realized I didn't want to be a campus director.
Okay.
But I wanted to keep moving up. I love the challenges. Again, and it all goes back to that phone call, that hang up. Like, I love resolving issues. So I saw an opportunity here. I wanted to make more money. And I said, this is the opportunity to go to. Started doing it, and I didn't know anything about cleaning. I mean, don't get me wrong, I help around the house.
Okay.
But helping around the house
is not the same thing.
It's not the same as cleaning a building. Also, my first account were medical facilities.
Okay. So they require a different type of cleaning?
They do. They were a little bit more strict on the type of products we were using. So I remember, first of all, I was telling them about all my experience that I had, which was limited to 1 year working with the other partner. And they asked me, have you ever done cleaning for facilities, medical facilities? Now, these were not operational rooms or anything like that, just like a regular primary care facilities. And I said, of course we have. I ended up going to YouTube University.
Okay.
And that's what we were talking about before the show. There's so much you can learn online now that you couldn't do before. So now whatever you want to learn, it's out there. So I told myself, you know what? I'm going to make this work. And I spent hours and hours following different cleaning companies that would be cleaning medical facilities. And I told the person, yes, excuse me, I know how to do it. And I ended up getting 5 locations. 5 small doctor's offices.
Right from the beginning?
From the beginning. I didn't have any cleaners. I didn't have mops. I didn't have any materials. I mean, I was starting off from scratch. I had 30 days to start opening all those facilities. Wow. So my luck came a week later when they said one of them needs to start right away. So it was great because I said, okay, these were cleanings at night. So I went out and started cleaning myself.
Okay.
I immediately put an ad out and I ended up getting a couple of people in. I interviewed. Luckily, I had the interview process down from my current job as director of career services. And that's it. It was a lot of trial and error, but it was staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning. So I would start my job at 8 o'clock. My regular job, and about 6 from there go straight to the facilities and clean. And then later on, luckily, I ended up getting some really good cleaners. So when the rest of the clinics opened up 3 weeks later, I could focus on those and leave that one working by itself.
So you were still on your in your 9-to-5 job.
I was still in my 9 to 5.
So when did you cut the cord?
So I ended up getting a call from another university and said, Juan, we're looking for this position in admissions. We know you never done admissions, but you have experience in going out to the community. We want to take your career services experience and mix it in with your sales experience and combine them into the admissions department. I said, beautiful. I said, so they said, half the time you're going to be doing regular admissions, trying to recruit for the school. This was Everglades University when they were moving down here to Miami. They're usually up north.
Right.
So we wanted to do brand recognition pretty much. Half the time in admission, the other time going out to the community, going out to events like, Greater Kendall, networking, spreading, getting the name out there. And I said, great, sounds like a good opportunity. Much better pay. I said, hey, I can do it. And the times were still good, so I can continue my side business. I lasted there less than 3 months.
Wow.
Because as soon as I got there, I realized, why am I here again following someone else's rules? And I don't want to say their promise, but the arrangement that we had was half and half time, but they wanted me to do strictly just admissions. And I said, no, this is not me.
Yeah.
And I lasted exactly, I think it was 2 months and 2 weeks. And I went I've never quit a job on a day. I always give my notice. This was the only job I ever went to. And I told him, I said, my director's name was Paul, great person, Paul Castellano. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. And it wasn't him. It was corporate, changed my whole.
Right.
And immediately that day, I said, I'm going on my own 100%.
So it almost wasn't by choice, kind of. You just got tired of.
It was an aggravation.
That one job.
I didn't appreciate how a company can bring you in on wanting you to do this and quickly change your job description.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to go through this anymore. I want to be able to provide better service to my employees and be able to have my own company run the way I think managers should treat their employees.
Okay, so we're
and just to add to that one more thing, because you asked me what changed too.
Yeah.
My last check I received 8 days later. And I remember I got the mail. I was running out to the company to do something. And I was like, oh my God, there's from there, my last page. I immediately took it. I took a picture of it. I took a selfie with it. And I said, I'm never going to go work for another company again. This is my last paycheck. Now, of course, when I quit, I immediately called my wife and said, oh, by the way, I'm leaving. And she said, oh, you're coming home early. I said, no, honey, I'm leaving. She's like, okay, where are you going? You going out to run an errand? She's like, I'm like, no, I'm done. From now on, we're going straight full-on self-employed. So her only concern, which was, and I would never forget her voice tone, she said, are you going to be able to pay the mortgage? I said, yes. She said, that's all I need to know. Okay, good luck. Go for it.
So now we're running out of time, so I want to talk about Healthy Minds Institute.
Yes.
And we're going to have you back because we're not going to do it justice in this short time. Tell me about your latest venture.
Okay. So later on, I realized I missed the teaching part of it. I became a facilitator for the school that I was in for cognitive coaching, which focuses a lot on the way we talk to each other, our self-talk, getting out of your comfort zone to succeed, right? Being able to go out, experience new things, going out to, for example, coming out here is not something that I'm doing 100% of the time, but you got to go out, you try new things, and to be successful, you can't stay in the same place, and how to write affirmations to reach your goals. So I became a facilitator at the college that I was in for 8 years, and I realized this is great information that needs to be passed on to every business out there. Because a lot of times changes happen, your self-talk changes, and then you're not going to perform well.
What is self-talk exactly?
Okay, so it's the way we repeat and literally talk to ourselves. So for example, if I walk out of here and I almost trip and I drop my agenda and I go, I'm always clumsy. I'm just a clumsy guy. So now you just told your subconscious and yourself, I'm clumsy. And you repeated it again. You said it twice. So now you reaffirmed it. Guess how you're going to act? As a clumsy person.
As a clumsy person.
If you make a mistake on a test and you go, oh my God, I just suck at taking tests. And this happens so much to college students.
Yes.
A lot.
I hear that a lot.
So what happens is they go, I'm just a horrible test taker. Carlos, I am a horrible test taker.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to do well. Well, guess what happens? When you're there taking your test, your subconscious is, well, you know what? I'm a horrible test taker. So it automatically, you start making mistakes. It blocks you from remembering the answers. So you start to yourself. It's kind of like a computer. Whatever you're telling it to do, that's how you're going to act.
Yeah.
So that's what your self-talk is. Now, and I don't know how much time we have here.
We don't have any time, but it's okay. We're a little bit over.
So the managers, what they tell you becomes the employee self-talk. So if your feedback to me is positive, my self-talk becomes positive. If it's negative, my self-talk becomes negative. So we wanted to open a company, and I do have a business partner that you've spoken with, Miriam, and that can go out into all the different businesses, colleges, and be able to promote this information that we can change the way we act, we can change the way we can perform in our personal lives and in our businesses.
Two last things. Who are your ideal clients, and how do people get in touch with you?
So right now, our website is hminstitute.net. We have all of our information there. We also have a YouTube channel we just started. Okay. We're on Instagram too, at Healthy Minds Institute. And our clients, and this is a hard question, and I know we spoke a little bit about it in one of the networking events, really can be anybody. It's just restructure a little bit different. When you're talking about colleges, then you're focusing more on what the college students are going through, and you rearrange the program for college students. Okay. But really, it's more for established businesses. It's businesses that have been doing the same trainings, and you want to get a little better production from your employees. So big companies like the banks, as a matter of fact, we started reaching out to one of the banks in Puerto Rico that they have different branch locations here. So right now, our goal is to reach these established businesses and try to introduce to them a new way of coaching their employees through their HR departments.
Awesome. That's all the time we have. Yes. A half hour goes very quickly.
It really does.
Right? Thank you for joining us on GKBA today. As always, we thank Community News for this platform, and stay tuned for our next event. Our next event is going to be a breakfast on July 11th, where we have an AI specialist that will talk about AI and how to leverage it in your business.